This is episode 1169.
I think what I'd like to spend my time doing in the next 12 months is preparing for the long-term trajectory and long-term future for BNI. And so the question I keep asking myself is, what can I do in order to enable my team and the organization to find the 5-10-year success that everyone is looking for, right? And so the more that we can set ourselves up with a long-term strategy, long-term financial health, long-term, accounting, sustainability kind of thing, both for my team and the organization, that's my number one priority. And so we're looking at where we can invest our time and money and resources in order to do so.
Relationships have always powered business, but in today's digital economy, they're often treated like a secondary channel rather than the primary engine of growth. Yet for millions of small businesses, relationships still determine who wins the next customer. Our guest today sits at the financial helm of an organization built entirely around that idea. Andrew Bender helps guide the strategy of BNI Global, where thousands of professionals rely on trusted connections to drive real revenue. But what happens when a CFO begins examining a relationship-driven business through a financial lens? Which metrics matter most? And how do you scale something as human as trust? Stay with us. Andrew Bender is about to help us unpack that challenge.
They say do what you love and the money will follow. My passion for making life beautiful led to a successful design firm, booming online sales, and a TV show. It also led to chaos, endless spreadsheets, and no single source of truth. We couldn't scale, so we chose NetSuite by Oracle. Now I get immediate visibility across the business, from revenue to customers and fulfillment. Clean, simple, beautiful. NetSuite is critical to the success of my business.
Hello, CFO Andrew Bender is with us. Andrew's career has taken him across a wide spectrum of finance and strategy leadership. He began as an analyst with William Blair before moving into corporate strategy roles. After earning his MBA from Harvard Business School, he joined McKinsey & Company, where he advised organizations on strategy, pricing, and finance transformation. He later transitioned into industry leadership at Snyder's-Lance, blending strategy with operational finance before stepping in to a number of CFO roles. Today, as CFO of BNI Global, Andrew helps guide the financial strategy of one of the world's largest professional networking organizations. Andrew, welcome.
Thank you, Jack. You nailed the intro there. Better than I probably could have done.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know that up front here. Hey, so we begin always the same way. We ask you to take a look back for us. And again, thinking of the role that you know so well today, what were those experiences now that you think, upon greater reflection, you think best prepared you for this role? What would those be?
Yeah, I think I look back on it and I think maybe the very first one is probably even back into high school. I think, I was at a football practice one afternoon, and my coach was kind of getting on me. And his comment to me was, do you want to be all conference or all state? Right? And as silly as that sounds, right? I didn't even think I had the all conference opportunity, right? And so I just think it's a great example of at times you need people in your life to identify the potential in you, right? And so, if I would have told you way back then that I was going to sit here as the CFO of BNI and doing the things I'm doing in my career and my life, I probably would have told you you're crazy, right? But I think as early as that, I think that there were opportunities along the way that inspired me to maybe think a little bit bigger, which I think is critical for anyone that wants to do big things. They need cheerleaders and they need folks to to point them in those directions, right? And so, for me, as far as my career goes, certainly I think there was a turning point in my time at William Blair where I looked around and thought, man, I could follow all my peers and go into private equity and, continue a career on the professional services finance side. But is that really what I want to do professionally? And does that give me and my future family kind of the life that I want for me and for us? And I think the answer clearly was no, right? Like, I think the parts that I liked about the investment banking experience were diving into the organizations that I was working for and representing, not necessarily the finance side and the investment side, right? And so for me, that really started my career trajectory on the operating strategy finance side as opposed to investing. And I've taken a series of steps along the way, having mentors in my life and having folks that I've looked up to. And I've always tried to keep my eyes maybe 5-10 years down the line of like, I know I'm in this role, but I'd really like to get to the next one, right? Or 2 or 3 more ahead of me. And so in order to get there, what do I need to do, right? And so there are a few, again, you asked for milestones along the way. I would say the decision to kind of get out of the investment industry and more into an operating role was certainly one. I think when I was at BNI Global, which was my position right after William Blair, I looked around me and thought, man, the folks that I really emulate here all have consulting experience. They've all got their MBA. They have a way to solve problems and communicate and manage projects and things like that that I felt like I wanted. And certainly through consulting and business school and the trajectory that I've had, I feel like I've gained a lot of that. So, kind of some early decision points, but nevertheless, I think certainly formative.
If you look back, and I'm going to ask you to make a guess, I suppose, but maybe your graduating class from the Harvard MBA program.
Sure.
Some went into strategy consulting, 2 large classes, portion went into strategy consulting, a portion went into banking.
That's right.
Was it a even split, or what was it at the time?
Yeah, I would say many more went into consulting than banking. I think, and I don't know if that's still the case at Harvard, but I think in a lot of cases, Harvard really focuses on the leadership aspect of their students, and I think in a lot of ways it breeds consultants that want to go help and lead organizations. And so, I had a lot of classmates that went into consulting. I think some of them went into consulting like myself, knowing we were going to go do something else later, and that we maybe weren't going to have a particularly long career in consulting. But I know folks that also went into Bain or McKinsey or one of the big consulting firms that didn't plan on sticking around, and they're still there, 12, 13, 15 years later kind of thing.
Yeah, you move in, and when you do, I think it's interesting too. One of the interesting things about your background is you have a variety of industries represented.
Sure.
You go to Snyder's Lance, which is in the food industries.
That's right.
And tell us about your decision there. I'll also point out you were a senior director of corporate strategy and business unit finance.
Sure.
So you're straddling sort of the two worlds rather nicely, I guess. But reflect on that a little bit for us, why you made that move. Yep.
Sure. Prior to business school, like I said, I was at BNI Global, which is a spirits business owned by Suntory Brands now. So, had some experience in the food and beverage industry and consumer goods. I like the industry. I still like the industry, right? I mean, I think it's kind of one of those things where it's easy to touch and feel. Like we make pretzels, we make sandwich crackers, we put them on the shelves, people enjoy them.
People relate to it.
Correct. You can relate to it well. I think to your point on the many different industries across my resume. You're exactly right. I think one of the really neat parts about the management consulting experience is that oftentimes you get thrown into companies, industries, functions that you don't have a whole lot of experience in, right? And one of the skills and jobs of a consultant is to get up to speed as quickly as possible so that you can start to understand it, start to, you know, not just ask the right questions, but start to answer the questions and solve problems for your clients. And so I think that certainly has kind of prepared me to be able to hit the ground running no matter where I am.
Yeah, to hit the ground running. Sometimes I'm wondering, having stepped into multiple, different CFO roles along the way, what signals tell you whether the finance organization was aligned properly with the business? What are the tells?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a good portion of what I've seen here, and we'll get into it later, I'm sure. But to me, there's always a question of how closely the finance team is working with the operators. If the finance team feels like it's off on its own island, and sometimes it can, right? Then it's pretty clear that your operators may not be aligned with your finance team, right? I think there's also something to be said for where you put your resources. And so what I found is when you've got really big accounting organizations and really small FP&A or strategic finance organizations, oftentimes there isn't that link and connection to your operating team. Whereas if you've got a really strong FP&A strategic finance function, you do have better connections there. And it really drives value from a finance function. I think oftentimes what I've been brought in to do, to be quite honest, is to make that connection, right? To your point, my career has really spanned the strategy, finance, operating kind of divide there. And so, oftentimes that's what folks who have brought me in are looking for, is someone that can help to merge those two worlds.
Seems like in banking and in consulting, you had the opportunity to observe the C-suite fairly early on, even as an analyst, perhaps. But what types of leaders were you perhaps learning the most from?
Sure. I think I would say it spans roles. I don't think necessarily it's all strategic folks or finance folks. The individuals that I have gravitated towards and have learned the most from, I think have maybe the confidence to know that that they're in the room for a reason, obviously, but in a lot of ways the humility to be able to sit and listen and ask questions as opposed to always provide answers.
Yeah.
And so, I find that those individuals I tend to learn the most from because they put the information that they're digesting through their own filters and through their own frameworks and their past experiences, and then are able to provide valuable insight and valuable direction to teammates along the way. And so, I can think of, Randy Chapman, who was my chief strategy officer at Snyder's-Lance when I came on board. I can think of a couple of CEOs actually from back in my banking and consulting days that really thought through things super well. Interesting. Dennis Muhlenberg, who is a former CEO of Boeing Company. I got to work closely with him on his transition into the CEO seat, which was really, really an interesting exercise. But just the way that he listened and asked questions, even being CEO of one of the most successful, largest businesses in the world, kind of thing, was really admirable.
Well, thank you for those insights so far.
Yeah.
We probably have a few more career-related questions for you a little later.
Sure.
Right now, for listeners unfamiliar with BNI Global, what does the organization do, and what makes its model unique?
Sure. It's a great question because, to tell you the truth, until about a year ago, I don't know that I had an answer to that, right? We like to think of ourselves as maybe the world's best secret, but so BNI is the world's largest referral networking organization. And so our structured model, I think, finds the perfect balance between the transactional act of generating business referrals with the transformational relationship building that you get in peer-to-peer networks, right? So we're founded on our first core principle of and value of giver's gain, which means we seek to give first, which goes a long way to building relationships within your networks. But we've got more than 350,000 members across 76 countries. Now, those 350,000 members are, primarily like small business owners and folks that are working to generate referrals for their own business or their own book of business. But those 350,000 folks have generated $27 billion in peer-to-peer referral revenue over the last 12 months. Like, wild, right? That's more than the GDP of like 75 countries, right? The really cool part, though, and exciting for me in joining the organization, is not just the benefit that we're producing within the economy around the world, but we honestly think it's just the tip of the iceberg, right? So in the U.S. alone, there are 2.5 million small business professionals that are interested in structured referral networking. Less than 10% of those are currently in a group. There's a massive desire for folks around the world, really, that are looking to drive business through meaningful connection, especially in a world in which technology is changing rapidly, search engine marketing is becoming prohibitively expensive, and it feels like all the forces in the world are pulling us further and further away from relationships. I got news for you. Small business owners and people that own their book of business know relationships are vital to what they do, and that's what we do best, is create and build relationships for folks.
Now, you've been answering that question now steadily for a year or two, I guess. But what do you think most people misunderstand about how the business actually works? What's the misunderstanding out there?
Yeah, I think people don't understand maybe the fact that networking is learned in a lot of ways, right? People often think like, I'm just not a people person kind of thing, right? BNI is not for me. I don't need that kind of thing. What we do is not only do people join in order to, generate referrals, and that's the primary reason that they're joining, but we actually teach folks how to network, right? And how to have the right conversations to grow their network and grow their business. And so, I would encourage Jack, we actually, I'm in a chapter. Our CEO and I, Mary, kind of joined the same chapter. We have a podcaster in our chapter, and so I would encourage you, Jack, to visit a chapter and see what it's all about. I would encourage all your listeners to check it out. I think it could help their business in big ways too.
From a finance perspective, then, what would be the key drivers of growth?
Yeah, so again, we've got 350,000 members across the world, and we'll get into it a little bit later on. But the core driver of growth is membership growth, right? And so, we strive to kind of change. We say our vision is change the way the world does business. So as we think through what we're really trying to do at BNI. Not only do adding more members increase our own, bottom line and top line, but it really adds to our mission and vision to see change in individuals, businesses, and in their lives around the world.
So as a network-based business then, which metrics best capture the health of the business?
Yeah, certainly I think our chapter membership growth. So, we have both chapters. So 350,000 members across the world are in a little over 11,000 total chapters, right? So the chapter is your core group of 30 to 35 folks, right? So not only are we looking at chapter growth, we're looking at member growth, certainly member retention, visitor counts, visitor conversion, things like that are some of the really key metrics and measures that we're focused on. But again, I think we'll touch on that a little bit more in a little bit. I don't want to dive too deep yet.
Do you, as a CFO, do you feel like you have all the visibility into those chapters that you require? We get the sense that it's, could be fragmented. Don't know.
Sure. We've got more data than we can handle, to tell you the truth, right?
And why is that? Systems? Have you always been sort of progressive in terms of how you're using technology, or what would you?
Yeah, our technology team has done an incredible job over the last, I guess we're 41 years old now, and so our technology team has done a tremendous job to build our own homegrown systems. We've got BNI Connect is the primary tool that we use, but we're collecting, I said $27 billion of peer-to-peer referrals. Like, we're collecting data on every one of those transactions, right? So members are logging their information, chapters are logging their information into BNI Connect. And so we've got massive amounts of data. And I think the question for us is, are we looking at the right data? And are the right people using it along the way? And so that's kind of our challenge on the data side at the moment.
What about resource allocation as it relates to this type of business? How is it different maybe from your other CFO tours of duty? Is resource allocation done differently, or you have a different mindset around it?
Yeah, it's I don't think that the mindset is all that different. The business model we have is a little bit different. So we are a franchise organization. And so, of our 350,000 members around the world, about 70,000 or so are in regions that we own and operate. And so the vast majority of our company resources are built around supporting those regions. That being said, our franchisees who, lead the other 280,000 members around the world are also using the same tools and capabilities and things like that. And so as we think through kind of resource allocation, where we're investing time, money, et cetera, people, we've always got to keep that in mind of like, yes, we are serving our 70,000, but really we're serving a much larger group of folks around the world. And so, in some ways we've got multiple customers. We've got our members as our customers, and we certainly have our franchisees as our customers, right? So we want to make sure that, our franchisees who are leading massive groups of people around the world in, Germany and Brazil and other places, that they've got all the tools necessary to make them as successful as possible.
So where do you see the greatest opportunities for BNI's growth going forward?
Yeah, a pretty natural trajectory for franchise businesses is that the founder starts it and it's very successful. And in order to scale and grow, what you do is you end up kind of selling off large portions of the business, right? And then at some point you realize maybe those portions and those territories were a little bit too big, right? And so for us, we think a big portion or a big part of our growth in member growth is rethinking what those territories look like, both on the company-owned side and in our franchise side, so that we can get, as Mary calls it, more talent on territory, right? And so, if you think through a franchisee or even one of our company-owned regions, may have one person operating, a large region where it's a 5-hour drive from one end to the other. Well, realistically, they're probably not servicing that entire region as well as they could, right? And so is there an opportunity to rethink the map to allow those franchisees and our operators to focus in growing their business close to home and bringing in more talent and more franchisees and more people to really focus on driving growth in areas where BNI is underdeveloped, right? And so, I'm from a small town in Ohio. BNI is not in Worcester, Ohio, right? But I tell you, there's an opportunity for it to be in Worcester, Ohio. And so the question that faces us is, how do we get BNI into Worcester, right? And how do we expand into places and reach places, communities where we're not actively supporting the community?
So we want to touch on AI with you. Where have you seen an impact from AI in this business model? Where is it going to be used?
Yeah, so I'll say, Jack, our big focus on AI, when it comes to AI right now, has almost exclusively been investment into customer-driven initiatives, right? So we're really focused on how to leverage AI to improve our members' experience, right? So, rather than doing your own Google and search and figure out how to find the BNI chapter, what we're doing is building BNI personas that can help you identify a BNI chapter or the best BNI chapter for you, right? So, or even if you already are in a chapter, we're working on personas that help you identify who should you be talking to, where can you generate the best referrals, who do we think you could actually give referrals to, those kinds of things. So we're really leveraging AI as a tool. Interestingly enough, we're leveraging AI as a tool for individuals to connect more personally, which is kind of neat. We think that the personal relationship aspect of what we do is really the core fundamental, and it isn't going anywhere, but that we can use AI tools to help support that.
Has that required, more investment, or, from your point of view and the AI discussion? Where is the CFO of BNI? Is he seated at the table as, these opportunities are discussed, or are you providing a framework? What are you doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So, certainly all of our investments, in particular on AI, I've got a seat at the table, and I'm opining on kind of where we think our best investment's going to be. I think that there's kind of two schools of thought, right? One school of thought is, how do we get people to pay for these new AI tools, right? And what's the ROI on it? I'm doing everything I can to keep my perspective on the long-term health and growth of the organization. And so, there's one school of thought that says, oh yeah, we should charge our members for using this, right? And that's how we're going to get our return. There's another school of thought that says, well, rather than charging our members for using it, what if these tools made BNI so attractive that it changes our retention metrics, it changes our ability to go and attract new members, et cetera. And what if AI was the real lever that we can use to go from 350,000 members to 1 million over the next few years, because people can't get enough of BNI and the value that it brings them. And so I think that's the kind of strategic lens to the finance side that we're trying to bring into that discussion.
Want you to look into the future for us, and just let's just say 3 to 5 years. How do you expect AI to change this role that you have, the finance leadership role?
Yeah, I think, as I said, we're really focused on AI efforts in customer-driven initiatives at the moment. I would love for our finance team to find more use cases. I think we're all kind of doing the same enterprise solutions to help us work a little bit more efficiently, right? But I really do think that, especially from a data leadership and an analysis standpoint, I think AI is going to play a big role in it. You know, that's a good question. I think I'd love to see where AI takes us. I don't know that I'm on the leading edge, to be quite honest. But I think that there's all sorts of opportunities to continue to learn and continue to leverage AI that even we're probably not thinking of, to be quite honest.
Well, we're up to what we like to refer to as our finance strategic moment. And again, this might have happened anytime during your career, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, last week, who knows? But what comes to mind when we ask for a finance strategic moment?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. And we've touched on it a little bit already. But I would highlight there was a time early on in my career here at BNI even, where we were prepping our monthly financial package for the board of directors. And it became pretty clear that we were having trouble communicating our financial performance drivers, right? That like we had a bunch of KPIs and then we had financial performance and there really wasn't a huge link to it, right? And so I stepped back and kind of said to myself, like, man, if our KPIs aren't tying to company performance, what are we doing here? Kind of thing, right? And so over the last 9 months or so, we've really embarked on a 2-part transformation campaign around data and KPIs and measures and metrics here at BNI. So we're tossing out KPIs that were KPIs just for the sake of having metrics and measures, right? Instead, we've really simplified it down to our fundamental business drivers. And at the end of the day, this business is not all that complicated. We basically have like 5 measures that really matter and really drive our organization. So it's on the member side, what's our member renewal rate? How many total visitors are coming in the door? What's our ability to convert those visitors? And then how many new chapters are we launching? And we've actually found that last one is wildly critical to growth, right? That your retention and visitor conversion is great. Oftentimes your visitors fill seats that departing members have left, but that new chapter launch is really what drives growth for us. And then I would say the 5th one is our average membership price, right? So if you take those 5 measures, which are all pretty fundamental business drivers, it really, you can then tie those to your business performance, right? And so if we're looking at those 5 things, we're going to have a much better sense for how our organization is performing. And I'd say this is a 2-part transformation, because just identifying that is great, but it doesn't get you anywhere, right? If I'm the only one that's focused on fundamental business drivers, it doesn't change our company performance. So we've taken every opportunity possible, including our forecasting process, our budgeting process, monthly financial reviews, et cetera, to really educate our operational leaders on the business drivers and why they matter. We've got excellent operators, people who are truly passionate about the power of BNI and what we're doing across the world, right? But they historically haven't had a finance partner that's explained to them exactly what drives profitable growth and long-term success here at BNI. And so we're really focused on driving that education and getting our teammates on board and influencing them in a big way, because we think that education will drive adoption, right? And adoption then will drive performance. So we're still early in the process. I said kind of 6-9 months in here. We've got a ways to go, but honestly, the early returns and the feedback have been super positive from the field, and we're seeing great returns on the financial side as well.
You've stepped into the CFO role a number of times at different organizations now. We're curious about that first 90 days. Way back when you took on the CFO role for the first time,
Sure.
what was unexpected? What didn't you know? You had observed CFOs for years, worked closely with them.
Yeah.
What was different?
Jack, my first experience as a CFO was with a very small business. And so when I came on board to a little company called iBenefit Communication, I was the first finance professional they had, right? So it was a founder-led business that had just taken on private equity money for the very first time, and had a third-party accountant basically running the books for them on a monthly basis. And so when I came in, what I quickly realized was this whole CFO role, you got to roll up your sleeves, especially at smaller organizations. There's a lot to be done and a lot behind the scenes that you don't necessarily see when you're a business unit leader or a strategy leader or an operational team finance guy at a large organization. And so, my learning, I think, in all of that, Jack, is to say there's a lot of pieces and parts that all roll up into the finance function. And you got to have your hand, or at least be aware of all of them, no matter the size of your organization, and that they all matter, right? You got to fill out your tax forms, and you got to make sure your regulatory requirements are up to date in every country you're working in, and all that kind of stuff, right? That you don't think about as you think, I'm going to come in and be the head of the finance organization. Feels like a big role. There's a lot of little things that need to get done too. I think that was a little eye-opening for me on the way in.
Great. Thank you for that. We always like to ask our guests to reflect a little on the personal side, wondering if there's something your colleagues might not know about you, an interest that you had, a pursuit, a football feat back in your early years. Don't know.
Yeah. Sure.
Anything come to mind?
Yeah. I mean, look, I could talk about my my high school and college football and particularly lacrosse careers for a long time. But really, I've got a wonderful wife and a 7-year-old boy who I love spending time with. And so, at this point right now, we spend most of our times on the weekends and the evenings together as a family. I think my favorite part of my day, to be quite honest, is sitting around the dinner table and catching up with them. And so, the CFO role is a lot of hard work, and there's a lot of nights where I'm back on my computer late at night, but I try and prioritize that time with my family, and it means the world to me.
Thank you. Nice snapshot for us.
Yeah.
Wondering, is there a book or a resource you might recommend? And the book could be a business book, but
Sure.
maybe not.
Yeah, maybe a hybrid business book. So as you know, I went to Harvard Business School, and I had the great fortune of taking Clayton Christensen's class. And I would say any book that he wrote is a really good one. But in particular, he's got a book, How Will You Measure Your Life? That applies his disruption and innovation theories to your personal life. Just an incredible read. And a short read. So it doesn't take long to get through it, but I found it wildly valuable in my life.
And I forget when Clayton Christensen passed, but at the Harvard Business School, he was one of those names.
Correct.
Can you give us a sense? I mean, did the class, was he just a regular, was it just on the program and you went to class and it was just the same as any other class, or did he just have to, show up 3 times a semester? I don't know. Right? He was a little bit everywhere. He was,
yeah, absolutely. So, his class, there were maybe 2 or 3 classes in the EC year. Second year is all elective curriculum. And so you get to choose what classes you take. And there were probably 2 or 3 classes that were the hardest to get into. And if you wanted in it, you had to put it as your first choice. And his was certainly that. But once you're in it, regular class. And I would say he, more than even some of the other professors, was wildly approachable. I spent more time in his office hours than any other office hours, and it was great to be able to connect with him and work with him. He, to your point, at that point was very well known. But he had also had his own challenges by that time as well. And so I think, you talk about the people that you learn a lot from and the people that you view as mentors in your life. And, if he was still with us, I'm sure he wouldn't remember me, but he was certainly a mentor to me. And I talk about that quiet confidence, but also the humility to ask questions and be curious. And he certainly fit the bill there.
Since, just to share, since he was so commercially popular with books like The Innovator's Dilemma, I think that was his biggest perhaps title.
That's right.
He made himself available to the press, so I got to interview him once or twice, and it was always so clear. Yet he would listen to my questions, made sense out of what I was trying to ask, and then answer the question. Anyway, just very much to the point, didn't waste time, didn't have any dogma. Anyway, thank you for that. Loved hearing about him.
Absolutely.
We are up to our final question. And Andrew, this is where we ask you to look forward. We're wondering what your priorities are for the coming year as a CFO of BNI Global. What would those be?
Yeah, so, I think my first year in a lot of ways was getting my feet underneath me, understanding all the things that we've got going on and making sure that, we're as successful as we can be. I think what I'd like to spend my time doing in the next 12 months is preparing for the long-term trajectory and long-term future for BNI. And so the question I keep asking myself is, what can I do in order to enable my team and the organization to find the 5-10-year success that everyone is looking for, right? And so the more that we can set ourselves up with a long-term strategy, long-term financial health, long-term, accounting, sustainability kind of thing, both for my team and the organization, that's my number one priority. And so we're looking at where we can invest our time and money and resources in order to do so.
Andrew Bender, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Jack, really appreciate you. Thank you.